The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on our live shows.
Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of This Week in Guns is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Welcome to This Week in Guns. This show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network and Patriot Patch Company.
And this show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Sean Heron. I always get the privilege of introducing our guests. And first up tonight, we have the producer of This Week in Guns, long-range shooter, editor, Firearms Radio Network extraordinaire, Kenny Ortega. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
No problem, man. Glad to have you here. Next up, we got the president of Connex Media and the founder of the National Rifle League and NRL 22. Please welcome Travis Ishida. What's up, buddy?
What's up, sir? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Glad to have you guys both here. And before I get into it, I just wanted to remind everybody to go check out the Patriot Patch Company. Join their Patch of the Month Club. You can find everything at patriotpatch.co. And thanks to them for supporting the show. Let's get right into it. First story, 7th and 8th graders in Iowa will get mandatory firearms safety classes in schools. This is going to start this spring. 7th and 8th graders must take the class, and it's optional for high school students. It's just going to teach gun safety, hunter's education type stuff. There'll be no live firearms, no live ammunition in the classroom. And this is in Butler County Conservation. So not everything, but I think that this, in my opinion, education is the key to everything, right? They don't have to like guns. They don't have to hunt. They don't have to like everything, but just like a lot of other things that we teach in schools, it's great to know and great to understand. So I think it's great. Kenny, I want to start off with you. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I think it's fantastic. I mean, we're teaching them, in health class, sex ed and stuff, and maybe they're not interested in sex, but they're learning it anyway. So this is just the same thing. They may encounter a firearm, and having the knowledge of what to do if they do encounter it is huge. I think this is, in stark contrast to if you look at Parkland right now, they're actually pushing back on the recommendations that teachers be armed. They don't want guns at all anywhere, but at least get some education on it. And with education, you can make an informed decision as opposed to just an emotional one.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, the reason we teach sex ed in schools is because we had a real problem with kids having premarital sex and getting pregnant as teenagers, and teaching sex ed in schools, cuts that kind of thing down. Travis, what do you think?
I think it's a great idea, actually. Not many people know this about me. I went to military school as a kid, so I was learning firearms, safety, and manipulation at a very young age. Our school actually had a rifle team, live fire. It's 22s, nothing crazy. But I think, knowledge is power. And the more knowledge that people have, I think it's better for everybody. A friend of mine actually just gave me a great scenario. A lot of kids learn how to swim, but they don't have pools in their backyard. And why do you teach them to swim? Because they might go to a friend's house who does have a pool. Mm-hmm. So even if you don't have firearms in the house, your kids are going to go visit their friends or they're going to be out there doing their thing. I would rather my kids know what to do if a firearm is ever present than be scared of it and not know what's going on.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's an excellent example. Parents who oppose the course can sign a form to opt out for their child, which sure, absolutely. I don't think that anyone who doesn't want their kids to do it should have to do it. And the Center for Injury and Research Prevention notes that most unintentional shooting deaths, about 89%, happen in the home. Many occur when children are playing with a loaded gun while their parents are not home. So education is the key to everything. We have done it so many times in the past, and I think that this is an excellent way to get kids kind of comfortable with this and at least to understand the repercussions of firearms so they know that's not video games, that there is a reality to it. I think hugely, hugely important. So a new study shows that the U.S. is not even in the top 60 in mass shootings worldwide. This comes to us from the Crime Prevention Research Center. You might recognize John Lott from that. And I'll give you the executive summary, but it says the U.S. is well below the world average in terms of the number of mass public shootings, and the global increase over time has been much bigger than for the United States. I thought that this was a very interesting article. One of the key things that I wanted to know, which wasn't in any of the summaries, so I had to actually download the paper, was what do they classify as a mass shooting? And they say that they use the FBI's traditional definition of mass public shootings, So clearly they're using something that's pretty well accepted as to what that is. And the US not only is below the rest of the world in this, but the trend line is much lower in the United States. Travis, what are your thoughts here?
Oh, I mean, I think that's great news that we're below the par, so to speak. I mean, it's not something that I'd ever want to claim to be in first place. Obviously, I think being lower on the scale here is definitely a positive for anybody. The fact that there is even such a thing that exists is kind of horrible.
Mhm.
But again, it's anything that we can do to help present or prevent mass shootings with education, mental health, whatever it is. I think I'm all for it.
Kenny, were you surprised by this report?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. What is surprising to me, well, not really surprising, it's actually rather appalling, is the fact that mainstream media will not run with this at all. They're going to take the CDC data that shows numbers that are vastly different because their philosophy on the whole study was skewed. So as a result, it paints a completely different picture than this. And I understand that John Lott has his biases as well. So
Mhm.
I'm sure that the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but the middle is far from what we normally see and what we're barraged with day to day.
Yeah, and what I
Right.
really love about this report is that it has many appendices that show all the data. They have spreadsheets with all the data pulled into it that they allow as downloads as well. They have links to every single case that's taken into account in this report, and I think that's the important thing is that the data exists to back up the findings that they have. I haven't been through 100% of it. It would take many, many weeks or months to kind of go through and not only read it, but comprehend it all and make sure that you understand it. But it is very interesting. And it is too bad that the mainstream media is not going to take a look at it because, it just doesn't confirm their biases, like you said, Kenny.
Yep, indeed.
Next story. Department of the Interior tells San Diego that they can't forbid shooting on BLM land in San Diego. So here's what happened is the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, they took action in November to ban recreational shooting on two specific places, Donahoe Flats and Pink Gate in San Diego. The NRA and the CRPA basically sued them, and the Department of the Interior said that they acted outside the scope of what they were allowed to do. Very last line in the article, gun owners throughout San Diego attended meetings and let officials know that the action is not lawful. NRA and CRPA backed them up, took it to court, and now they can still shoot on public land. I think it's a great thing. Travis, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a great thing as well. That's actually I didn't have a chance to read this particular story, but San Diego is less than an hour away from where I live. So, this is huge for us because in Riverside County, where I spend a lot of time, a lot of the BLM land has been closed off for firearms use. Their main reason for citing the closure has been fire. They're afraid of firearms starting fires and
Mhm.
people going out there with steel core and things of that nature. And it does happen, and I get it, but I think that it's great that the NRA and everybody else stood up and fought this, so that people that are responsible gun owners can go out there and enjoy public land.
Yeah, I agree. And that you just said the key word. It is public land. The department county or the what is it? The county department of supervisors or whatever does not own this land. This is public.
Right.
This is our land to use as we see fit. Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in Riverside County, where Travis was just talking about, and shooting areas here. You have to check with the ranger station to see if they're going to be open that day because when it gets dry and hot, they shut it down due to fire danger, or they'll shut it down because people go out there and they don't clean up after themselves and they make a mess. And that's huge. You'll see all kinds of waste out there, and thankfully there are groups out here that will do periodic cleanup days so we can try and maintain these lands so we can continue to shoot on them. We don't need bureaucrats going in and making it harder for us as it is. Like you said, this is our land. This is public land that we're entitled to shoot on, and them sticking their noses in where it doesn't belong it's just a travesty. And if you, I mean, in LA County, there used to be another shooting area that has long since been closed in Little Tunga Canyon. That used to be a great place to shoot. They shut that
Right.
down. There's others along in the Angeles National Forest that used to be open that have been shut down. And these areas are just declining, and there's fewer and fewer places to shoot, which means that people are going to find places that they shouldn't be shooting. And we need to keep them open for that reason, so that people do have a place to shoot, so they don't end up going somewhere that's dangerous and they put other people in harm's way.
Yeah. Idaho medics get tactical with armored ambulance. So I know people are concerned a lot with the over militarization of police forces across the United States, but I'm not sure anyone could really have any qualms about over armoring our paramedics. So Ada County in Boise, Idaho, they have unveiled their new MedCat, which basically is for them to go into unique situations, active shooters, things like that, so they can actually pick people up. Historically, they have borrowed armored vehicles from other departments and things like that, and not had all the life-saving equipment they would normally have on an ambulance rig. They would go in and extract whatever it happens to be. Now they've got this MedCat. $300,000 is the cost for that, by the way. And now they can go into hot zones, all that kind of stuff. It's outfitted inside with everything that a normal modern ambulance would have. I think this is pretty cool. I know that in a lot of situations, we send our first responders, paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, things like that into some pretty crazy situations. And the more protection that they can have to better do their jobs, to better save the people that they're going to save, I think is a good thing. Travis, what are your thoughts?
You know, I'm curious. I've been to Idaho several times, and I'm curious what's going on in Idaho that they need something like this.
I had the exact same question. I was like, I don't know what's going on there, but good for them.
Right. I like the idea only if it actually accelerates response time. Oftentimes when you get a active shooter call or you get a firearms related injury call, the first people on the scenes that have to clear the scene, from what I understand, are law enforcement. If and that, depending on how law enforcement does their job, it could prevent the medics from providing medical aid, a couple of minutes to a longer period of time. If these vehicles help provide a safe way for the medics to get to the injured people at a faster response time to provide life-saving aid, then I'm all for it. $300,000, $1 million, it doesn't matter if we're going to save lives. If it's not going to do that, if it's not going to actually help accelerate response times and help accelerate the medical aid situation, $300,000 is, that's quite a bit of taxpayer money for one vehicle. So I don't know. I like the concept if it helps people faster, but if it's not going to do that, then what's the point?
That's an excellent point. Kenny?
Yeah, I'm kind of in line with Travis there. Basically, this all came about as a result of at least one of the points that helped bring it about was 2 Boise police officers were shot in 2016. So just over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And, in situations like that, you can't have an ambulance go in because they're not armored. They're not prepared. They need to sit back. And, you got other officers that are just sitting there watching their brothers bleed out. So if this is something they can do to get them in there, not only for officers, but also for the public at large. But my question is, are they going to armor up the medics as well? Because sending in a vehicle is one thing, but if the medic is not armored, he has to go into harm's way to try to get this person to safety. That's going to do no good because they're just going to sit and wait in this armored vehicle until the situation is clear, and there's no advantage to having it at all. So it's going to be a wait and see game.
Yeah, I think throughout the United States, different departments, different first response teams and organizations are giving plate carriers to paramedics and things like that. I did look at this to kind of see what kind of armor it had there, because yes, they drive into a hot zone. That's all well and good. They could even use the vehicle to block, to put between themselves and the shooter. But clearly it doesn't extend all the way to the ground and in any of the armor or anything. So, a round goes under it and hits them. Definitely a bad thing. It was definitely a concern I had as well, Kenny. Excellent point bringing that up.
Thank you.
Nunchucks are protected by the Second Amendment in court ruling. I guess this kind of surprised everybody. This news comes to us from Bearing Arms, but apparently now, and it's in New York, I believe, you can own nunchucks, that they are ruled legal because the Second Amendment extends to weapons other than firearms as well. So, James Maloney, I believe, is the name of the guy. I just remember that from last night. And he brought this case, and now this guy is allowed to carry nunchucks in New York. That's great, I guess. I'm all for people being free. I don't really care what they do as long as they're not breaking the law. I think that's a great thing. Kenny, A, do you have nunchucks? B, are you going to get nunchucks? And C, what the hell do you think about all this?
Okay. I used to have some really nice nunchucks, and they disappeared years ago, unfortunately, and I never replaced them. But yeah, ironically enough, I got them in New York.
Nice.
So, yeah, I was born and raised in New York. I lived there for 18 years, and New York is a state where everything is illegal. I mean, just having the thought of something is illegal over there. So, they banned these nunchucks in 1974 with the rise of Bruce Lee movies and other martial arts movies that were coming out at the time, and just as a way to try to curb people from beating each other, basically.
Yeah.
And it's just stupid because people are going to beat each other with whatever they can find. They don't need something special. But what it did was it prevented a lot of people from defending themselves with something they might be proficient with. So, this is a good thing. You dovetail this in with the fact that there's a knife challenge that may reach the Supreme Court, which will affect New York as well with their gravity knife laws and such.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can start turning some of these ridiculous laws around and allow the good people to protect themselves, because the bad people, the criminals, they're going to have these things anyway. So why not let the good people have them as well?
Yeah. Travis?
Yes, I own nunchucks. They're in my safe. Do I know how to use them effectively? Hell no. I think I end up with more bruised elbows and foreheads than more. I do more damage to myself than I do to somebody else. But they were, a cool gift. I think it's pretty funny that nunchucks were even banned. Period. I believe in California. I don't know if this is still true or not. Maybe Kenny, maybe you can attest to this or pitch in. But in California, if you were caught carrying nunchucks, it was concealed. It was a felony. Whereas if you were caught carrying a firearm concealed, it was a misdemeanor. So laws on nunchucks have always baffled me, and it's crazy. And I think, with the world that we live in, with MMA and guys going out and training at the gym and learning how to fight and do all this, the guy that looks like the computer programmer down the street might very well be a black belt in something that can totally whip your butt. Not to say that you're going to pull out nunchucks, but I mean, if somebody wants to hurt you, they're going to hurt you. So having a nunchuck on a ban list is kind of ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I agree. And thanks to Amazon and the power of Amazon Prime, in 2 days, will be the proud owner of nunchucks. I just ordered them. I'll put them right next to my bump fire stocks.
There you go.
Just don't bring them to California.
No, dang it. That was the whole reason I bought them. That was my segue into bump fire stocks. The bump stock ban signed Tuesday becomes effective in 90 days after it gets published. There's already been lawsuits against it. We'll talk about that next. This comes to us from the AP. And it's been all over the news. If you haven't heard about it, you can definitely check it out on every single news source that exists across the United States and the world in general. Trump came out and said it. The NRA said that they think that the ATF should take a look at it again, and that anything that basically mimics a machine gun should be banned. Trump said bump stocks are gone a few weeks ago, and now the reality is here. It looks like bump fire stocks will be banned. And let me just say clearly that this is in response to one person. In fact, I think probably more people have committed crimes with nunchucks than people have with bump stocks. This is one person. The festival in Las Vegas. It was awful. It was terrible. But to pick this specific device, this thing that makes you incredibly inaccurate, and they're pretty difficult to even use or run, especially effectively as a killing tool, is ridiculous to me. Not only that, but there's no grandfather clause. So the ATF said in multiple determination letters that bump fire stocks did not break any of our existing laws. So people took that determination exactly as they should have, and bump fire stocks were completely legal to manufacture, to purchase, to use, whatever it happens to be. So American citizens have traded money to the companies or distributors or whatever it happens to be to buy a product. And now the United States government under Trump and the ATF and the Attorney General are going to say that that thing that you purchased legally, you now have to destroy. So this is, in my opinion, not just Second Amendment. This is property rights. This is government overreach. This is taking the power out of our Congress and houses and legislators and everything else that exists, and taking it all away and giving it to an agency that runs at the whim of whoever happens to be running the agency at the time. We can't recall them, we can't elect them, we can't fire them. all power has been removed from United States citizens in this. Travis, what do you think?
Well, I mean, first off, I'm not a huge fan of the bump stock. I think it's kind of a novelty type item at best because it completely takes away your accuracy and proficiency in using that firearm.
Yeah.
So the fact that the bump stocks exist or don't exist, I don't care either way. The fact that the government is trying to force us to give or to turn in property that we legally purchased or legally own, I'm completely appalled by. If we own something, we legally obtained it, whether it's a bump stock or nunchucks or whatever the heck it is. I don't think the government should have any right to be able to say that, hey, you because of this, you now have to turn all of this in. I think it's just tyrannical. I don't know. I mean, it opens up precedents and doors for so many other things in the future that it's in no way, shape, or form any good, in my opinion.
Yeah. And mark my words, when a maniac uses a pistol brace in a crime, guess what's coming next? Kenny, what do you think?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I did study some constitutional law when I was in the police academy, and there's a few things here. So one, we have the taking of property without compensation. Okay, so 14th Amendment, that's a violation there. You also have something, ex post facto. So they're creating a law that makes something that was legal yesterday illegal tomorrow, and they're going to go ahead and prosecute people for it, which also is a violation. So you couple that with the fact that this is a regulation that was made by a government agency that is not a legislative body. So it's not legislated law. So how can it be put into effect if it hasn't been legislated by Congress? So it doesn't make any sense. I don't see how this can stand constitutional muster based on those facts. So eventually it is going to get overturned, in my opinion, or at least modified. But I don't force, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to suffer through whatever they have to suffer through in order to make that happen.
But how do they even enforce this? Because from what I understand, bump stocks aren't serialized. You're not registered when you purchase them. I mean, just because you pass this law, what you're essentially doing is you're just turning more law-abiding citizens yesterday into criminals tomorrow.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's unenforceable because, I mean, they would literally have to go through and find every person that ever purchased one. They would have to go through every manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, distributor, and find all those records, subpoena for those records, get those records, then find the people. I mean, it would be absolutely impossible. They have no intention of doing any of that. This is going to be one of the things that if you get into an argument with a wife or something like that, and the police come and then for some reason they go through and start looking through firearms or see something sitting on the kitchen table, suddenly you're now in violation of this and in danger of 10 years and $250,000 per occurrence. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Firearms Policy Coalition has already sought for an injunction and filed a federal lawsuit. A couple things here. Josh Prince says the ATF has misled the public about bump stock devices. Worse, they are actively attempting to make felons out of people who relied on their legal opinions to lawfully acquire and possess devices the government unilaterally, unconstitutionally, and improperly decided to reclassify as machine guns. Our good friend Adam Kraut says in its rulemaking, the Trump administration is attempting to abuse the system, ignore the statutes passed by the Congress, and thumb its nose at the Constitution without regard to the liberty and property rights of Americans. That is unacceptable and dangerous. It is beyond comprehension that the government would seek to establish a precedent that it can arbitrarily redefine terms and subject thousands of people to serious criminal liability and the loss of property. And for the people out there who wonder what this means, just replace bump fire stocks with anything. Your home. Okay. Well, they can take your home. Clearly, eminent domain already exists, and it's very often awful and used inappropriately in a lot of different cases. But what about your car? You put your car in the place of this bump fire stock. What if someone with a red Toyota, kills 50 people and suddenly they decide red Toyota shouldn't exist? And I realize this is a completely ridiculous argument, but the government shouldn't be able to say, hey, it was legal yesterday and tomorrow you're going down the tubes for 10 years and $250,000. It's just crazy.
Well, I agree. And actually, to your point, cars kill more people than a bump stock ever has.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, everything kills more people than a bump fire stock. Like a guy that I knew in high school has killed more people than a bump fire stock. So
Right.
it's just utterly ridiculous.
Gravity kills more people than all of them.
Exactly. Heart disease,
There you go.
cancer, everything kills more people than bump fire stocks. It's such a completely arbitrary thing to pin it all on. And yeah, I'm with you, Travis. Bump fire stocks are stupid. I have two of them. I have two of them sitting in a box because they suck so bad I took them off, and I have no use for them whatsoever. I mean they're dumb, but it's for me, it's not about bump fire stocks at all. It's about everything else that we've talked about, and I find it just reprehensible.
Yeah, I guess the only saving grace, and I need to verify it, is that binary triggers and the like are not affected by it.
So far, it seems, but I mean, wow, I would have to imagine that has to be right after it, right? Once the ATF can reclassify their opinions and basically outlaw items, accessories, or even firearms, I mean, once they have that power and that precedent, it creates a very, very interesting United States.
Well, that's the whole thing, is they're using this to create a precedence to go after other items in the future, known or unknown to us at this time. And that's the biggest problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree. Guys, LA County deputy faces 21 years in prison for shooting suspect that hit him with a stolen car. I don't even understand how this goes.
Right?
The website's not loading, but I did read it. I did read it in detail.
Excuse me.
So this is a good officer, a quiet guy that just did his job. He had multiple awards and commendations in his service. He hears a report of a stolen car. He sees a car that matches the description at a gas station. He approaches the suspect who is pumping gas and asks him, whose car is this? The suspect replies, mind your own business, or none of your business, or something like that. The officer goes down to write down the license plate, and the suspect gets in the car, revs the engine, backs into the officer. The officer has, in my opinion, absolute reasonable suspicion that either his life or the life of others are in danger. He does his job after being hit by the car. Well, I don't even care if the car bumped him. I don't care if it hit him hard. I don't care if it bumped him even a tiny bit. This is a guy who clearly doesn't have respect for the law. The deputy tells him to stop, get out of the car. He sees him reaching into the back, so the deputy draws his firearm, orders him to shut off the car and show his hand. The guy does not comply. Deputy fires, I believe, 7 rounds, is what I kind of remember, and then administers CPR to the guy after hitting him 4 times, I believe. And Kenny, I'm sorry if I'm getting these numbers wrong, but the website's not loading for me, so I'm doing all this from memory.
Nope.
And paramedics show up. The guy ends up dying. The officer the deputy gets placed on administrative leave. And at that point, he thinks everything's kind of just like going as it normally does in use of force cases for officers and things like that. Well, now he's been charged with, was it voluntary manslaughter?
He's facing 21 years. I forget what the actual charge was.
I think it's voluntary manslaughter, and he had a $1.1 million bond.
Yeah, it is voluntary manslaughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. Well, I mean, this is what happens when you have civilians that are in charge of policy and that is something that is big here in the Los Angeles area. I know LAPD. I've had several friends that have been fired over the years for various things that they did or didn't do that shouldn't have led to it. But the Board of Rights, they just go ahead and fire. It was especially prevalent under Bernard Parks. That it was just ridiculous the way that they were firing officers left and right for not really any good cause. Maybe some things that should have gotten them suspended, but they fire him, and now they're going ahead and prosecuting this guy on something that it's just any review of legal process will tell you that a vehicle is a deadly weapon, and the fact that this vehicle was coming at him was definitely it entitled him to the use of force, use of deadly force, and which he exercised, and hopefully a jury sees it otherwise, and hopefully his union is backing him on this and giving him good support, because he's going to need it. But yeah, it's horrible that this deputy, a 10-year veteran, is being dragged through all of this only to make something look good in the eyes of the public.
Yeah, which is just the dumbest thing I can possibly imagine. How did they, and why would anyone be a police officer in LA at this point? Because I mean, this is LA County Sheriff, I think, and I have no idea why anyone would even want to be a police officer there. They clearly they can't do their jobs. Travis, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it's absolutely disgusting that this is happening to him. It's not only LA County that does this. It's a lot. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement in California, and a lot of them question why they even do their job anymore. Because if they do their job effectively, they're going to get scrutinized for it, potentially a lawsuit, potentially fired. All these potential things could happen to them, even if they do their job 100% correct. If they make one little mistake, we're all human. If they make one little mistake, but they're still within the boundaries of the law and of their job, they could potentially lose their entire livelihood. Whether or not he's found guilty or innocent, the fact that he's going to get drugged through court and has to pay for all of this and has to deal with this in his own personal life it's disgusting. Why protect and serve if no one's going to protect and serve you when you do what you're asked to do?
Yeah. 100% with that. And look, I mean, maybe the court case will come out and maybe he did some stuff wrong. I don't really know, but from what I've read, from what was in this article, I just can't even imagine being a cop in LA and having to deal with that. And I actually know a couple cops in LA, and I need to ask him. I need to ask him, man, like, are you okay? Because holy crap, I don't even know why anyone would do it, to be perfectly honest. Pretty heroic, in my opinion, when faced with things like this.
Yeah, it's crazy the way that cops are treated nowadays, law enforcement in general. It's just you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So why even put yourself in that situation?
Yeah, completely agree.
Totally guilty until proven innocent.
Yep.
14-year-old gunman kills himself after opening fire on police. This comes to us from a middle school, Indiana middle school. Apparently, someone had heard that he was going to do something. Officers were able to confront the teen outside. The teen fired into the safety glass at the school, ran inside. Officers and the teen, the 14-year-old, exchanged gunfire. And then, when faced with, any kind of adversity whatsoever, the 14-year-old took his own life. And this is one of those situations where, if you know something, say something, and it stopped something that probably would have been, wow, so much worse. I always worry. I always think about this whole, if you see something, say something, or if you hear something, if you know anything about someone planning to do this, I always feel like it's a very slippery slope and it's a very dangerous way to play, Minority Report type games. But on the show, we have pretty often good things coming out of stuff like this. We have stuff that's bad, but stuff like this is extremely good. I'm really glad that this happened. Congrats to the officers and the people who took action, the school, whatever it happened to be. Travis, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I mean, I think the entire situation is unfortunate. 14 years old, you barely have a life. You don't, I mean, the kid's barely getting to experience life at that point, in my opinion. To me, it's obviously it's a great thing that the officers were able to take appropriate action and, do everything they could to keep surrounding people, innocent people, safe. I think that's obviously a very good thing. But I think the bigger question is what was so messed up in this kid's life that he had to take a gun from somewhere. He stole it. I mean, there's no way he legally owned a gun at 14. So he stole a gun, whether from his parents, a friend, whatever, right? What was going on in his life that was so miserable that he had to do this? And I think those are the issues that also need to be addressed, because if we don't look at the root cause of why kids feel that they have to do these type of things, then it's just going to continue to happen. We can only do so much being reactive, which is the law enforcement getting there in time. It's a reactive because at that point he'd already threatened the school. But how do we even get to, how do we even get there? Why? What's so bad in this kid's 14-year-old life that he has to do this?
No idea. Kenny, what do you think?
You look at 14-year-olds, and obviously we were all there once. I remember at 14 in New York, it was all about, this was in the early 80s, it was all about taggers. Taggers were, throwing up their tags all over the place, trains, subways, walls, whatever. And it was all trying to gain notoriety. So I think with the 24-hour news cycle and the fact that when there is a school shooting, those people become famous. They're out in the news for days, weeks, months on end. And you have somebody who is in a fragile mental state at 14, trying to figure himself out, probably already suicidal, okay, and wants to go out with a bang and make a name for himself. And the media is helping that by, you know, just glorifying these school shooters and putting their name out there time and time again. So you have these kids that don't know which way to turn, what they want to do, but they know that they want to do something big so that they can at least be, immortalized among their peers. And it until we get the media to realize that they are doing more harm than good by putting this information out there, I think we're going to continue to see things like this. It's not the gun is not the issue. The fact of the matter is that someone wanted to try to make a name for themselves and they had an outlet to do that.
Yeah,
It's like
totally
that
agree.
movie, 15 Minutes of Fame or whatever it was. It's you're absolutely right. The media does not help in these situations, and it does provide some kind of popularity, some type of momentary fame, but still, it's at 14, same thing. I was growing up, tagging was big and all that kind of stuff. We used creative outlets, even though, I tagged when I was a kid. It was a creative outlet, even though it was illegal, but it was at least, I wasn't going around trying to hurt somebody,
Yeah.
physically hurt somebody. And just the mental state of our youth right now, where they think that that's okay and that's the way that they need to grab the attention, is a total lack of I don't know if it's a lack of parenting or structure or what it is, because I don't have a 14-year-old, so I don't have to deal with that at this point, fortunately. But at the path that we're going, I think it's just going to continue to get worse.
Yeah, I agree. I will say education here. They educated people that if you know something bad is going to happen, tell somebody. They educated people who knew, hey, I've got this information. Let me do something with it. They educated the students, staff, and teachers who have all undergone drills. They all responded appropriately. The officers knew what they were doing. Education saved lives this day, and anyone who would kind of get in the way of that education, I think, is incredibly irresponsible. But we're seeing it even in Parkland right now.
Yep, agreed.
Agree.
Venezuelans regret giving up their guns as crime runs rampant and the government does nothing to stop it. So there is a ton in the story. It is from Fox News. But basically they banned guns. I think, let's see, the year they issued the gun ban and ran a months-long amnesty program, there were only 37 recorded voluntary gun surrenders, but a majority of the seizures that they did, more than 12,500, were by force. So they outlawed guns, they confiscated guns, and now these people are having to live in this lawlessness, and they're dying. They're running as far as they can, as fast as they can. And the people that they interview in this article on Fox News, they hate it. They point it directly towards the fact that they cannot protect themselves, that they had this ability, even though it really stunk to get a carry permit or a gun permit, whatever it happened to be there. And it was rife with bribes and all kinds of other corruption. They actually could do it, and now they can't. And these people's lives are kind of basically they're just running into nothing but crime and lawlessness. So for all the people who want to ban guns, who want to take the Second Amendment away, the right to bear arms away, take a look at Venezuela. I mean, clearly this is something that, I mean, could happen just about anywhere when you take away the citizens' right to react to tyrannical government or even just criminals. Travis, what do you think?
I think it's again, it's appalling that Venezuela felt like they could do that to their citizens, and I feel very saddened for their citizens that they have to live in this state of chaos and anarchy right now. I know personally, if it ever came down to that stateside where somebody was trying to confiscate my firearms or do anything of that, in that nature, I'd automatically be a criminal. There's no way I'm going to surrender my firearms. I have a CCW. I had an FFL for many years. I do everything I can to follow the laws as well as I can. I mean, they change daily, so I mean, it's kind of hard, but you do everything you can as a responsible citizen to protect yourself. You can't rely on government. You can't rely on law enforcement. You can't rely on anybody else to protect you when shit hits the fan, or when bad things hit the fan. Because when it comes down to it, the criminals are always going to be criminals. And whether you have a firearm or not, they're going to have them. Doesn't matter who says what or does what. There's always going to be a way. And if by some miracle all the guns ceased to exist in the world, you know what? They're going to come after you with nunchucks. They're going to come after you with a knife. They're going to come after you with the staff. They're going to come after you with whatever they can come after you, because that's the nature of a criminal. And there's not enough law enforcement. There's not enough government. There's not enough military to be everywhere every second of the day to protect you. So, to me, responsible citizenship, in the state that we live in, not California, but in the environmental state that we live in nowadays, is a must. I carry every single day. It's a CC, it's supposed to be concealed. It's always concealed. But do I let people know I am concealed? Yeah, because you know what? If something happens in my vicinity and I have the responsibility to protect myself, my loved ones, or somebody near me, I'm going to do it, whether it's against a criminal or it's against somebody who could be a criminal, or whatever the situation is. I'm not going to let somebody take my rights away from me.
Totally agree. Kenny?
Yeah, in Venezuela, there are so many issues going on right now, and a lot of this crime that's going on is actually being perpetrated by the government. They have their roving bands of warriors that they call colectivos, that are going out and doing their policy enforcing, and attacking people that oppose them, that have views different than their own. You look at that. You look at we have one of the richest oil producing nations in the world, and their people are starving. All the animals in the zoos have been eaten. People are there's no dogs and cats around. They're eating rats to try to survive. A loaf of bread costs like a month's salary. People are just completely destitute. The government is sitting back making tons of money, and doing nothing for the people. And what do they do on top of that? That they add insult to injury by going ahead and sending their thugs out to attack the people. And all of this came about because they gave up their guns. They have no way to fight this. There's nothing they can do. They're just being starved out.
Yep, totally agree. It's a disaster, and I do feel for him, definitely. I wish that they had the ability to defend their own lives, but they don't. I'm very curious to see where it goes from a, I don't know, sociological perspective, to see when it shifts and when the people have had enough. Clearly, they hate what's going on right there, and they're leaving en masse, but it's crazy. All right, enough of that. Let's move into the I'm offended segment. This is just some of the stuff that has offended us. Man shot by female motorcyclist that he attacked is memorialized as a gun violence victim. This comes to us from rallyforourrights.com. And there's a website called Gun Memorial. And they had this guy. February 2018, a young woman shot and killed her attacker during a public road rage incident. It was 23-year-old Aubrey Bolin was riding her motorcycle when an irate driver began to act recklessly. He didn't like how she was riding her motorcycle, whatever happened to be. 60-year-old Bruce Jones was mad, exited his vehicle, boxed her in a location she couldn't drive away, or she couldn't escape from, exited his vehicle, physically attacked her. The description here, he says that at one point, Bolin headbutted Jones, who then drove Bolin's head into a Jersey barrier before taking her to the ground. He hit her and shook her, she describes, like a dog shaking a toy in its mouth. He violently tried to rip her helmet off and was choking her with the neck strap. She believed he was going to choke her to death. She shot him once in the chest when he attempted to climb on top of her. He died at the scene. This is clearly an unbalanced individual, road rage, whatever it happens to be. He was trying to hurt her. She defended her life with lethal force. Absolutely exactly how it's supposed to go. And this website that says that this guy who's trying to beat up a 23-year-old girl with reckless abandon is a victim of gun violence. Absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I remember this story. We talked about this story on the show back in February. And I mean, obviously he was the aggressor here. Road rage got the better of him. He went ahead and attacked this poor girl who was much smaller than him, and she was basically defenseless, and she did what she had to do to survive, because he probably, if not kill her, was definitely going to hurt her badly. And now for this group to go ahead and portray him as a victim, it's just sickening. The mindset that these people have, that anyone that is shot, good, bad, or indifferent, they're a victim. Well, no, some people are not victims. Some people are the aggressors, and they needed to be taken out.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're just a blemish to society at large.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to find Hitler on this website as a gun violence victim. Travis, what do you think?
I think it's disgusting. I think that woman should have shot him earlier in the incident. As soon as some guy, girl, whatever has me in a position where I think my life is in danger and bashes my head into a guardrail, as soon as I can reach for my gun, that person's getting shot. At that point, your life is definitely in danger. The fact that it's being memorialized is disgusting. I feel absolutely sorry for the people that believe that he is the victim in this situation, because obviously their view of reality is skewed. And I don't know the story, all the details, but from what you've told me, if there's something different that I'm missing, then, maybe I have a different opinion on it. But, somebody, that's like saying, hey, that dude was trying to rape, my wife. And so my wife shot him because he was trying to sexually assault her. Now let's go build a statue for him.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. That's horrible.
Totally agree. And to portray him as a victim of gun violence is the worst kind of dishonesty, in my opinion.
It's a complete fraud.
Yeah. She used her firearm in self-defense, and that's our next advertiser's second call defense. That's kind of what they cover, is what happens after you pull that trigger. In uses of lethal force, self-defense, anything like that, any kind of self-defense purpose that you use a firearm for, second call defense, you call 911, you call them, and then they kick into action. They make sure that you have attorneys. They make sure that you have anything that you need: bail money, expert witnesses, crime scene cleanup, criminal and civil, both defense and damages, if you should lose the case. And it's very, very inexpensive. Go check them out. firearmsradio.tv/SCD. For me, it's an absolute mandatory thing before I leave, before I even have a gun in my house, is to make sure that I'm protected if I ever have to use it. Because stories like this, there is clearly a large portion of our society that thinks that someone who got shot for trying to harm, murder, or kill a 23-year-old girl is a victim of gun violence. And that's what we have to fight against. And that's why I use second call defense. Next story: the Pittsburgh mayor, with Bloomberg-funded governor at his side, proposes gun control measures that violate state law. This comes to us from the NRA ILA. There is a lot of information in the article, but really it deals with preemption, that localities, cities, municipalities inside of a state a lot of time cannot preempt, state laws and things like that. This clearly exists in Pennsylvania, but the Pittsburgh mayor says that he's going to ban guns and doesn't really care what the repercussions are. Kenny?
Yeah, definitely. That Josh Prince and Adam Crowder are all over this.
Mhm.
But what I find, just really surprising, well, not really surprising, but, the governor is standing right there by his side. And the governor obviously knows that this is not legal. He's backing him on his play. And obviously, because of the amount of money that he received from Bloomberg, it was, a sizable donation. It was like $200,000 he got from Bloomberg or something. for his campaign.
500,000. Yeah, 500,000.
Yeah. So, obviously he's been bought and paid for, and, Constitution be damned, state laws be damned. They're going to go ahead and try to push this through. And, it's just more of chipping away at our rights one little bit at a time, see what they can get away with. And if nothing else, what it does is it legitimizes the argument for when they can go ahead and do it later on.
Mhm.
I said that time and time again, where we have laws in effect today that they tried 20 years ago but couldn't get them through. But what they did was they legitimized the argument, and eventually people said, you know what, maybe it's not so bad after all, and it ends up going through.
Yeah, completely agree. Travis?
I agree as well. I mean, it's I don't even know what to say. I think it's just ridiculous. It's like, are you serious? It's that you're breaking the law. You're going to stand there. You got paid off. It's obvious. Anybody with a brain and two eyes that can read understand what's going on here. So the fact that the people in Pittsburgh or in that area are going to allow this to happen, it's like,
Yeah.
ser-
Right. The I'm offended segment, like it is exactly that kind of story that just makes you shake your head and you can't even formulate a thought. It's ridiculous. Speaking of, the next one actually has me of two minds. On the one hand, I'm like, yeah. On the other hand, I'm like, haha. New Jersey police are not exempted from their new magazine ban and will become felons if they carry their duty guns off duty. So here you are, you're a police officer in New Jersey. You're bebopping along with your standard capacity magazines. And now they pass this law and they're like, oh yeah, well, if you have this, you're going to be a felon as well. And it's crazy. I mean, these are people that are hired to enforce the law, protect the population, whatever it happens to be. And now they can carry their duty guns when they're on duty, but off duty, they're just like everyone else. And I think that it's stupid and I think that it's ridiculous, but also, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Travis, what do you think?
I think it goes both ways. I think it's kind of ridiculous. I think magazine capacity bans in general are stupid. With proper training, a 10-round magazine, and you have proper training, you can reload just as fast as somebody can shoot 20 rounds and get those rounds off. So putting capacity on magazines to me is just ridiculous to begin with. Should law enforcement follow the same law as normal citizens? Yes. But law enforcement also has traditionally, more training than a regular civilian. They are expected to, for more or less, they're expected to be a cop 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So whether you're on duty or you're off duty, if you see a crime taking place or somebody's life in danger, if you're a cop and you've made that oath, you're going to do what you can. You should do what you can to save people. That's your oath that you gave, right? So limiting somebody to have the proper tools to do their job on or off duty, to me, doesn't make sense, because if you're a law enforcement, if you're a cop, you're always a cop. If you're a firefighter, you're always a firefighter. There's no switch that you can turn on or off.
Yeah. And I mean, like, yeah, even they can drive to their duty station with their patrol firearm or whatever it happens to be. But that's pretty much it. Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I saw a meme and I had to repost it because it said, cops with 17-round mags going to be arresting cops with 17-round mags for having 17-round mags.
Yeah,
right. And it's just only in New Jersey is something that ridiculous true. But we saw the same thing with the SAFE Act when they rushed it through. They realized that cops weren't exempted. They had to go back and modify it, and I'm sure they're going to do the same thing here. So it's just a bunch of hullabaloo that is going to blow over because they're going to exempt them. But that doesn't change the underlying fact that like Travis said, they should comply with the same laws that the public did. They're still civilians. I mean, there's not like there's royalty or anything else that needs to be exempted and they're of a higher status. No, they're people just like everyone else, and they should be held to the same standard. So if it's 10-round mags, it should be 10-round mags for everyone, and put them all on the same level playing field. But again, I also agree that magazine capacity bans are ridiculous, just by their very nature.
Yeah, I completely agree. The next segment is our full auto news segment. This is just kind of interesting, crazy, whatever it happens to be stuff. If you guys have stories that you'd like to talk about, I'll go to you next. But the first one is professor hired mercenaries to rescue her student from ISIS so he could finish his thesis, which I had to go read because I was like, say what now? All right. So this student messaged his professor and said that he probably wouldn't be able to finish his PhD thesis because he was in his home country. I don't even recall what it was off the top of my head, but that their village or whatever was surrounded by Islamic State, ISIS, whatever it happens to be, and he wasn't going to be able to do it. So the teacher, Charlotta Turner, professor at Lund University, basically took action. She went and talked to their security at the school, Lund University's then security chief, Per Gustafsson, and apparently they had the ability to provide some protection to students throughout the world. So they sent in a four-man team of mercenaries. They were able to get in armored vehicles, rescue the student and his family, and pull them out, exfil them to an airport, and get him back so he could finish his PhD. I'm like, I don't even know what just happened, or if this, and apparently it's never happened before. The company does have to pay back the university for the mercenaries that they hired, but wow. Kenny, what do you think?
So much for the dog ate my homework, huh?
I know. That's not going to work. That dog's going down. It's like they're going to hire the ATF to take out that dog.
Oh,
Right?
for real. Yeah, that's insane. I've never heard anything like that. I saw that and I just had to throw it in there because I mean, this is way over the top. It's firearms related, but man, just she's serious about her students.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Travis?
To me, it sounds like a bad script for a B movie.
Or an amazing script for Bruce Willis.
Right?
Bruce
I mean,
Willis plays Per Gustafsson.
I mean, shit. Talk about dedication from your educator. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a professor, do anything more than maybe grant me an extra day for homework, let alone send out a team of mercenaries to come protect me.
Yeah. It's amazing. I honestly can't even believe that actually happened. But congrats to that professor for being like, you know what, I'm going to go the extra mile for this student.
Right.
And now he's actually working in biochemical, I believe it was. Let's see, it was the last paragraph here. Works for a pharmaceutical company, got his PhD, and good news all the way around. Unless he invents something terrible and it like turns everyone into zombies, and then it was a bad move.
Right.
Other than that, good. Anyone else have stories that they would like to talk about in full auto?
You got one, Travis?
No, I'm good. I just I'm enjoying the conversation back and forth. So
There were a couple of good ones there.
Which other ones did you like, Kenny?
Well, I think the craziest one on here, besides the robot that impaled a guy, is this Texas woman shot a masturbating bicyclist when he was trying to get into her home. So this guy apparently is riding down the street, fondling himself and masturbating on a bicycle. She told him to knock it off. That basically, he's out in public and have some decency. And she goes inside, and apparently he tried, getting into her house. So she shot him, and good on her because obviously where his hands have been, and you don't want them on you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, masturbating while riding a bicycle, that is a unique talent, and I feel like it was wasted in this case. He didn't have to go after her. But he did get what he deserved. I feel like he may have been able to go like into Cirque du Soleil or something. I think in Las Vegas, they've got some shows like that. So I think that, what a loss to humanity is the masturbating bicyclist and his circus of lies.
Well, the funny thing is, how do you explain that when you call 911? This guy was jerking off on his bicycle and tried to walk into my house, so I shot him.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel as the operator, the 911 operator, to get that call? It's like, do you laugh or do you take that serious? I mean, that's just crazy.
It is completely and absolutely insane. And that will wrap up our full auto news segment. Before I go, I just want to remind everyone, check out the Patriot Patch Company, patriotpatch.co, and also look into some self-defense insurance with Second Call Defense. That's firearmsradio.tv/SCD. Now, Kenny, you're the editor of Gun Funny. You're the producer of This Week in Guns. Firearms Radio Network needs you, loves you, and appreciates you. What have you been up to?
I have been working on getting some certifications. There's been trying to get some work. So there's a job lined up that I can get contracting for the Navy. I just need a couple of certs. So I got my Security Plus last week, and now I'm working on one half of MCSA, Windows 10.
Nice.
So if I get that, then I can go ahead and get an interim security clearance and get in there and hopefully start earning a decent income again.
Very nice, man. Love to hear it. Thanks for all that you do for the Firearms Radio Network.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, Travis, let's talk a little bit about kind of what you do. So Connex Marketing, NRL and NRL 22. Tell us what those are, where people can find them.
All right. So first, I want to apologize because I have a little bit of a head cold going on. So if I sound funny, I'm sorry.
No.
Cool. So Connex Media, we're a marketing and media firm for the firearms industry. We specifically specialize in long-range precision in that market. The National Rifle League is a national series of precision rifle competitions that we hold throughout the country. Competitions are 2-day matches. You're shooting targets anywhere from a couple hundred yards all the way out to a couple thousand yards. So small targets, big targets, barricades, positional, throw a lot of quote unquote tactical type of shooting stuff in there. And it's a lot of fun. Majority of it's bolt rifle. And then for, you know, the kids and the wives and the families that want to get into the shooting sports and learn firearm safety and become a part of a very fast growing market, we have the NRL 22, which is basically the same thing, but it's all done with rimfire with 22. So it's a lot more cost effective. It's a lot easier to do. Shorter distances. Obviously, we're not shooting, you know, thousands of yards with the 22. You know, we keep our ranges to, you know, about 100 yards. Some of the clubs will shoot, you know, 200 or 300 yards for those more custom high-end 22s, and they are accurate. They will do it. But it's just it's a lot of fun. It's a newer sport as far as what the public is getting introduced to. Precision rifle has been around for years, but it's just now becoming very popular, and we're very blessed and very lucky to be at the forefront of providing these type of competitions.
Very cool stuff. Where can they find more about both Connex Media and NRL 22?
So the cool part about that is you go to one place and you can find all of it. And that's nationalrifleleague.org. We are a 501c3, so everything that we do goes right back into our community, right back into the sport. And we're super stoked and excited to be here.
So awesome, man. Travis, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it and hope to have you back soon.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. I had a great time.
Definitely, man. Guys, if you're out there listening, leave us a review in iTunes. Helps people find the show, or even if it doesn't, it helps people decide whether to listen to the show. If you enjoy it, let us know. If you don't, let us know as well. Again, that's This Week in Guns in iTunes, Facebook, wherever you can find us. Definitely leave us a review. Check out Patriot Patch Company and Second Call Defense. And as I always say, This Week in Guns is produced by Kenny Ortega and is a production of the Firearms Radio Network. Kenny, everyone else, I'll talk to y'all next week.